What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/ All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We officially begin week 2 of Pittsburgh Steelers organized team activities. Plenty to look for on the South Side this week. The quarterback battle, I would say, what we're looking for in the offense, what we're looking for in the defense. I got a running back that I think we should start paying a little bit of attention to after an impressive week 1, a guy that seemingly floated under the radar that I am excited to share my thoughts on with you guys. Meanwhile, ESPN's got some gnarly projections for the Pittsburgh Steelers running back duo, and Kenny Pickett making news and upsetting Steelers fans really in only a former Pittsburgh Steelers type of way. It's a beautiful day here in the Berg. I was worried it was going to rain today on us for OTAs, but it's not. Head to the South Side. Very excited about it. I apologize if I start sneezing up a storm, getting over a cold here. So, we're on the back half, but we're soaring. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. Golf season is in full swing. Poolside season is now in full swing with Memorial Day weekend behind us. So I'm in a good state because I love the summer months. Don't get me wrong. I like fall. I like when football comes back, but now we're getting a little bit of the best of both. We got some football on the South Side, and then we also got some pool time and some golf time on the weekends.
I agree. Have you gone out? I went out for my, I've been out a couple of times, had some good rounds, had some bad rounds, went out for my bachelor party. I might have told you this. And worst golf I've ever played in my entire life. We played captain and mate. I think we used 2 of my balls, all 18 holes. It was at the end of it. The guy, my groomsman, looked at me and he was like, dude, look at man. I know it's your bachelor party, but I'm legit carrying the team right now. And I was like, I know, I'm trying real hard. Will say won some money, so I'm not upset about it. But have you got out this week or this year?
I haven't got out for a round, but I've hit the driving range and the putting greens a lot over the past couple of weeks, like 4 or 5 times. I get out there when I can, but I'm waiting to hit the links. I think this weekend's going to be the first round.
Beautiful. Love to hear it. Definitely love to hear it. It is a golf season is the best season. I would say golf, then transition into football. Doesn't get much better than that. In the meantime, we will head to Pittsburgh Steelers OTAs week 2. Plenty of action. Quarterbacks, running backs, offensive line, wide receivers, corners, really everybody. We got plenty to talk about as we head to week 2 of organized team activities. We'll start with the quarterbacks. This is what I have, and I think everybody has their eyes on when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, you want to talk about what Arthur Smith's offense is going to look like, but I think it's too early to kind of know that. I was joking around with some guys last week. We were sitting there and some crazy play happened, and we all looked at each other and we said that will never happen in the season because that is not a play that this offense will actually run. That's the time of year that we're at. They just kind of run an offense. They don't run their offense. They don't run anything past the vanilla. They just run what can we put out there to see if these guys are good enough to play some football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we won't see what Arthur Smith's offense is going to look like just yet. Probably not until like the end of training camp, right when the roster's probably sitting somewhere around 65 guys, somewhere around there, 75 guys, because I don't remember what the cut list is. For right now, it's the positions, it's the players, it's who's out there, it's who's going to make some moves, who's impressing, who's not impressing. Obviously, the quarterbacks are the people everybody's got their eyes on. Last week, it was Russell Wilson. It was stating a case that really he is the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that he was the guy that was out there every single day as the QB1 and remained the authority in the quarterback room. And he had Arthur Smith talking with him in the locker room and so on and so forth. This week, is that still the case? Or does Justin Fields get a little bit more? And I don't expect a ton. I don't expect Justin Fields to come in here and be the guy that takes over the QB1 or for them to switch. Like, I don't expect Justin Fields to now be the guy that takes first team reps and Russ takes second team reps. But I am interested to see if Justin gets a little bit of first team, a little bit more of those first quarterback out there than he was last week, because last week he got literally 0 of it. And I'm interested to see if that changes. Obviously, when you talk about the offense as a whole, we want to see the wide receivers, who's going to impress in the wide receiver room, who's going to be the guy that steps up in absence of Deontay Johnson, who's going to be the 2. Is Quez Watkins as impressive as maybe we started to see? I want to see Des Fitzpatrick. Somebody tossed out Denzel Mims the other day. I think offensively, that's where I'm looking, is the offensive line is still hit a guy and stand there. So you can't really tell much. Running backs are, at least in team drills, not really much to watch outside of a name that's impressing me in individual drills. But I'm looking at Justin Fields. Is he a guy that takes a step forward? Do the Steelers kind of give him more of an opportunity in week 2? What are you looking for as we hit the south side?
I mean, I haven't been there in person, but from all the reports that you've indicated, it seems like it's been a little bit choppy with the wide receivers. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to hear reported back from you, is a lot more fluidity from these guys. Obviously, we know George Pickens is going to be great with whoever's throwing him the ball, but I want to hear less drops. I want to hear, oh, it looked like it was routine for them. It looked like they were all on the same page, because yesterday or last week, it seemed like there was still a little bit of a learning process, a feeling out process between these new quarterbacks and these mostly new wide receivers. So I want to hear about a little bit more fluidity. I want to hear about a little bit more impressiveness coming from the wide receiver room. You're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Not muted anymore. I agree. I look at fluid, like, it's because just like last week, like we said it 3 or 4 times, like it's tough to look at this group and say, was that a bad pass, or would George Pickens come down with that because he's George Pickens, and Quez Watkins wouldn't come down with that. Van Jefferson wouldn't come down with that. Roman Wilson wouldn't come down with that. It's tough to see that. I want to see more of that. I agree with you. But at the same time, I want to see Des Fitzpatrick. I want to see Denzel Mims. I want to see Marquez Callaway. I want to see these guys, because to be honest, week 1, I wasn't impressed with the guys that were out there. And I know Stevens made the argument that he kind of was. And I don't know, maybe I have a different view, but I just haven't been. I've been looking at this group and I've been saying, these guys, they're not, nobody I would say is guaranteed to make the roster if this was a better roster. I want to see the second group of guys. I think Des Fitzpatrick impressed last year. I think Denzel Mims is a guy that people were excited to sign to the Steelers practice squad a year ago. Why not give him an opportunity? I think that's what I'm looking for. It's like, yeah, I want to see everybody take a step forward. At the same time, I want to see if they're sleepers, because I think you only have these 3 weeks. Like, I think these 3 weeks will decide if the Pittsburgh Steelers get super aggressive for a wide receiver. And I don't think a Brandon Ayuk or a Deebo Samuel is still on the table right now. But I think that the Steelers could get aggressive in the fact of, let's go get a Treylon Burks, let's go get a Juwan Jennings, let's go get a John Mechie, maybe a Cortland Sutton, depending on how aggressive they want to get without giving up much draft capital. I kind of look at it like that and say, you have the next 2 weeks of OTAs and 1 week of minicamp, which is essentially just 2 days, to prove that the Steelers should, and your team should, stay the way that they are heading into training camp. I want to see more guys get an opportunity to impress, because quite frankly, the group of guys out here, like, it's not like last year. It's not where it's like, oh, Deontay Johnson, Calvin Austin, Allen Robinson, like those are your guys. There are no guys. There's George Pickens. That's it. I want to see the rest of these guys kind of fill their way out here. And I think the Steelers should give them an opportunity. Like, that's how I kind of look. This is on Pittsburgh to look at this and say, we have to see if everybody's good, or if we at least have somebody out there that could impress, because right now we have literally nobody. Like, literally no one is impressing for the Steelers wide receiver room. So excited to see that. I would expect more of that this week, especially in the wide receiver room. Toss it over to the defense. What are you looking for on defense this week?
Defense, and it's a similar thing on defense, because the defensive line isn't doing a lot in team drills. The linebackers are probably in 7-on-7 doing a little bit more of the coverage kind of thing, but you know what to expect when you're looking at the linebackers there. Peyton Wilson's going to be good in coverage. Patrick Queen's going to be good in coverage. Landon Roberts, not so much. I mean, it's not his specialty. It's not where his wheelhouse is. So you're not really looking at that. So again, it falls to the secondary. How does Darius Rush follow up a good first week? Can he build off of it? That's the big thing for me, because that he was the big name last week. He was, as you mentioned, if there was an MVP for week 1 of the OTAs, Darius Rush was probably in that conversation. So can he build off of that? Or does somebody else come in and step up and perform well? Does Beanie Bishop kind of exert himself and kind of, make sure that he is the name that everybody's talking about over an Anthony Averett, over even a Darius Rush, maybe in that slot position? So I'm looking to see which of these guys can step up to the plate in the secondary and be that, second level MVP, because you have in Joey Porter, you have a pretty good idea of what you have in Dante Jackson. So which of these other guys can get up to that level where Rush was last week and really make his name known going forward into the summer?
Yeah, I agree. I want to see, and to be honest, like, I want Darius Rush to be the guy. Like, I do. I'm a guy that, if you impress me early, gonna give you the spotlight. I'm gonna give you an opportunity. Elijah Riley did that last year. Impressed early in OTAs, impressed early in minicamp, and all summer long kept impressing. And if it doesn't, if it goes the other way, I'll back right off. You are no longer the guy. You're not that dude. But right now it's Darius Rush. Right now, Darius Rush is the guy where every year you find a sleeper on defense that you feel has potential. I think the difference between this year and last year is this year, Darius Rush is a dude who I think has like potential in the NFL. Not a journeyman, not a guy who's just looking for a shot on a roster. Darius Rush is a dude that when he was drafted by Indianapolis, he was viewed as a guy who could be a piece to that defense for a long time. And it didn't work out. I get it, but he's still raw. He's still developing. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a guy that you could mold into something impressive. I think Darius Rush is right now my guy. I agree with you. I want to see him, to be honest, I want to see him win MVP again, week 2. I want to see him go out there and continue to ball out, continue to impress so that we have more to talk about this kid, because that's it. Like, and it goes two ways. Like, Darius Rush is a good dude. Like, you talk to him in the locker room, nice guy, always willing to answer questions. Not, always says what's up, always joking with guys in the locker room. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a dude who could be a good teammate, be a good fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Omar Khan talks about being a Pittsburgh Steeler all the time. I think Darius Rush fits that bill. I want Darius Rush to be the MVP, but I agree with you. Like, that's who you're looking for. You're looking for, is Beanie Bishop ready to take a step forward? Anthony Averett. I think all eyes are going to be on him this week, because last week he was kind of lost in the shuffle. And you don't really want that, especially with Cam Sutton floating out there, Patrick Peterson making it known he wants to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, you're looking for more in these guys. So I agree. I think all eyes will be on those two. I'm looking at Darius Rush. I'm looking at those two. I'm looking at Corey Trice take another step forward, although individual drills, you're only kind of getting so much. I think people are making a bigger deal out of it than it is with the whole Corey Trice looks impressive. This guy's going to be a stud. Come on. And if we're going to be honest, the Dante Jackson thing, there's a lot of talk out there. I've seen it all over the place, and I laugh at it constantly. And I'll probably get some slack when I head to the stadium if people see this, because they'll know who I'm talking about. But there's a lot of people out there right now who are talking about, oh, do the Steelers have somebody next to Joey Porter Jr. good enough to start opposite of Joe? Yes, his name's Dante Jackson. They didn't trade their starting wide receiver for a guy who's going to come in here and compete for a starting job. They traded their starting wide receiver for a starting cornerback. That's what they did. Dante Jackson is the dude opposite of Joey Porter. I have no worries about Dante Jackson being the guy next to Joey Porter Jr. I think those two will work very well together. I think it's time to shut that conversation down early of the, is Dante Jackson good enough? Do the Steelers have that guy? Is it an open competition? It's not. It's Dante Jackson. That's who it is. If you ask Mike Tomlin right now, the answer is Dante Jackson, and it's going to remain Dante Jackson. I agree with you. I agree with the week 2 MVP. Excited to see it. We'll see plenty of it in the next 3 days. And I think, just like you said, wide receivers and corners have the best opportunity this time of year to really impress and make a name for themselves. And I want to see everybody kind of do that. Let's talk about another guy, this time on the offensive side of the ball, that I think people should start paying attention to. His name is Aaron Shamplin. Shamplin. I don't know. There's a weird L in there. He's a running back. He's out of Harvard. He's been a little bit of a journeyman in the NFL. He's undrafted in 2022 to the Dallas Cowboys, spent time in Dallas, Indianapolis, then the UFL with the Houston Gamblers, ended up in LA with the Chargers last year, and then signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers this summer. A guy that I don't think anybody knew who he was. I don't think people realized he was on the Steelers roster when OTAs floated around, because, to be honest with you, I had no idea. I looked at him and I said, who's number 33? Who's that guy out there? And somebody said, oh, that's the dude from Harvard. And I said, I don't, that's not enough for me, pal. I don't know who the dude from Harvard is. But the more I've watched him, he's been very impressive. He's taking a very significant handful of snaps when it comes to, parts of practice where Najee and Jalen are not out there, which I think is impressive. And when you're fighting guys like, you got Dejon Edwards out of Georgia, you got Jonathan Ward, you got LaMichael Perrine, I think you have an open competition for that, running back 4, if the Steelers choose to keep a running back 4, which I don't see why they wouldn't. I don't know why you would. If this wide receiver class was a lot better, you'd have an argument to say, oh, well, you're going to keep more wide receivers than you are running backs. That's not the case. You're looking at this and saying, you might as well keep some running backs because you don't have wide receivers. I think Aaron Chaplin's a guy that he looks explosive. He looks like he's got good vision. He's a dude at Harvard. He finished with 2,200 yards in 3 seasons and 23 touchdowns. He had 11 touchdowns his last season, 9 touchdowns the year before, and 1,000 yards. He's got 3 receiving touchdowns at Harvard as well. I look at him as a name. It's early. I want to see him actually put the pads on and see if he can hit somebody. I want to see if, a guy like a Landon Roberts just makes him hate his life when it comes to backs on backers. Those things are very important. But you get a sense for these guys early. We knew Jaylen Warren was a stud at OTAs 2 years ago. We knew Najee Harris was going to be a menace 2 years ago. Anthony McFarland last year was the name that it's like you knew he was going to make the roster because he was impressive. You get a sense for running backs this early, and I think Aaron's a dude that I got my eyes on. Let me ask you this. I know you haven't been there, so you can't tell me if Aaron has been impressing, but I could ask you, do you think the Steelers with Cordero Patterson keep 4 running backs as we stand right now, or do you look at it and say, there's no point in keeping 4?
I think that there's no reason not to keep 4. I mean, you look at Cordero Patterson, that's the biggest reason. Yeah, he's your running back 3. He can take some of those snaps. He can take some of those carries. But at the same time, if your wide receiver room is underwhelming and Cordero Patterson ends up being your number 3 receiver 2 or number 4 receiver 2, he's going to need to get snaps there as well. And you need some insurance when it comes to the running back room, especially in training camp, when you're not going to want to have Najee Harris take a bunch of meaningless training camp reps. You're not going to want to have, Jaylen Warren take a bunch of meaningless training camp reps. So you're going to have somebody that elevates themselves to be that type of player, especially with, like I said, the lackluster wide receiver room, and knowing that you're going to need to lend Cordero Patterson out wide more so than you would if you had better wide receivers in your organization. So I think that there is definitely a battle for who's going to be that running back 3B or 4, because I do think that Patterson being kind of one foot in both worlds kind of changes the aspect of it here. And with those 3 names, 3 interesting opportunities there. You have that guy out of Georgia that you mentioned that is a young guy that has scored a lot of touchdowns with Georgia, but then again, you're playing in front of a NFL offensive line.
Yes.
So again, it's a matter of who's the most impressive. And I think the door is wide open for one of these 3 guys to walk right through and get themselves a spot on the 53-man roster.
I agree. And I think that Jonathan Ward was my name to watch after rookie minicamp. But I don't know, like he's kind of fell back a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, like I was talking to you, I was joking about it, and I hope that this doesn't make its way to him, because I would feel terrible a little bit. I'd have to go apologize that I was talking some smack, even though I don't mean to be talking some smack. But LaMichael Pirine was a dude who, when he signed, everybody was like, "Oh, there it is, man. This dude's going to be impressive." And I told you, like, I took a bunch of videos of this dude during his first practice. I was ready to, kind of like introduce him to the fan base. Those videos were not good. There were a lot of drop balls, a lot of Eddie Faulkner kind of being a little upset with the new guy. Not a name that I was very impressed with in week 1. Hopefully that changes in week 2, because I think he's got the Super Bowl caliber, depth piece. He's been on the Chiefs. He knows how to play in the NFL. I think Jonathan Ward's the same way. If you've been in the NFL a couple of years and you've made rosters, you know how to do the rest of it. You know how to play special teams. You know how to be a pass blocker. You know how to do the things that a 3rd, 4th string running back knows how to do. So I think it's still up in the air on who makes the team. Shapklin is I'm going to ask him today how to pronounce his last name, but Shapklin is a name that I'm going to keep my eyes on, because, to be honest with you, I'm very impressed with what I've seen through 1 week, 3 days of OTAs. All right, want to talk about ESPN first. I've had this in my DMs for like the past 12 hours. I've probably had 30 people tell me, "Hey, you got to talk about this on the podcast." So I think it's time to address it. Nick, I'm going to toss it to you. What we got? 1 news and notes today.
1 news and notes, and it's a pretty interesting quote from a former quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett, when asked about being on the Philadelphia Eagles after his first week of OTAs. He said, quote, "I couldn't ask for a better room. Better staff to be working with. Obviously, the talent around this team is pretty special. So it's a great group to be in. A lot of people are taking that as a shot to the Steelers. Do you take it in the same light?"
No, I don't. I think a lot of people look, and I get it. I get it. Like, I get that people don't like Kenny Pickett, that, anything he says is going to be a little bit of that rubbed me the wrong way. I understand it. Like, you leave the Pittsburgh Steelers the way Kenny Pickett left the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're going to look at it and say, I'm not the biggest fan of you. And I totally understand that. That answer would have came out word for word of Kenny Pickett's mouth if he was in Pittsburgh, if he was in Cleveland, if he was in Baltimore, if he was at Pitt, if he was in the CFL. It doesn't matter. It would have been the same exact answer. That is who he is. Every week we talk to the quarterback in Pittsburgh. Every single week. It's a Wednesday. And every single week I would not go talk to Kenny Pickett. You want to know why? Because I would make the joke every single week that I could probably just take his quotes from last week and make it the same story this week, because that's what he does. He just says the same things all the time. I don't think it's a shot. At the same time, if it was a shot, it's hard to deny it, man. Like, you could look at the Philadelphia Eagles offense, and it's pretty damn impressive. Like, it's really hard to look at this and say, yeah, you got Jalen Hurts, that's pretty good. You got Kellen Moore, that's pretty good offensive coordinator. Saquon Barkley's not a bad running back. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, not bad wide receivers, and Dallas Gobert as a tight end. I mean, I'm not complaining. So I think that my answer is no. If it was a shot at the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think the best way to go about it as the fan base is to not let this guy live in your head rent free. Is to just, I tell people that all the time. Like, if you looked at my DMs every single day, it is very aggressive. It's a tough place to be. My fiance looks at it every once in a while. She gets like angry. She's like, well, this is ridiculous. I'm like, dude, the best way to avoid this is to just let them, you take up space in their mind. They don't take up space in your mind. That's how you go about it. I think that's how we should handle Kenny Pickett, and how the fan base should handle Kenny Pickett. Let him live his life, man. In a year, if he's not a starting quarterback, people will forget that Kenny Pickett is in the NFL. I'm going to tell you that. So I don't think it was a shot. I wish Kenny nothing but the best. For anybody who took it as a shot, it's okay. He's going to be okay. And I'd be very impressed. I think a backup quarterback in Justin Fields is much more impressive than a backup quarterback in Kenny Pickett. So I think that's where I stand. All right, last thing I want to talk about here before we answer all your questions. ESPN had a very interesting projection sheet for the Pittsburgh Steelers running backs, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, both taking steps backwards. Najee going to have his first under 1,000-yard season with 890 yards and 6 touchdowns. And Jaylen Warren's only going to have 597 yards with 3 touchdowns after a 7-some season a year ago. Yeah, I mean, I got thoughts. I'm going to hold my thoughts. What are your thoughts on this projection?
I didn't take it seriously reading the headline, but then reading deeper into it, I took it even less seriously, because it's not even just the yardage. It's not even just the touchdowns and the production. It's the carries number. Yeah. They were projected to both have less carries than they did last season. So you're telling me with Arthur Smith, a running offense, a better offensive line, an improved offensive line on last year, they're going to overall run the ball less than they did? That to me just tells me, okay, this entire thing is baseless in my eyes.
I was not expecting you to go there, but I think that's hilarious and spot on. Like, I think that's where we stand with the Pittsburgh Steelers is all off. It's like Mike Clay hasn't even been paying attention. Like, I think if you told him Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers and they used a first-round pick on a left tackle, he'd be like, what? Are you really? Are you serious? I didn't have any idea. All offseason, we're talking about 2 things, and that is Arthur Smith is going to run the football, and Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren are going to have massive years because this offensive line and this offensive coordinator are built to run the football and have strong running games. Mike Clay apparently does not see that happening. He sees it the totally other way. This is a Russell Wilson offense. He's going to throw the ball all the time. Arthur Smith is going to forget what won him football games in both Atlanta and Tennessee, and he's going to say, you know what? I think I'm going to try something different this year. I think that's what we're doing. I don't know if Mike Clay, he probably doesn't follow every press conference, but I was sitting there I was 4 feet from Art Rooney last year or this past year in February or whatever, when we talked to him. And he said, we are going to get back to Pittsburgh Steelers football, which I think every single person on this live stream right now knows means they're going to run the football a lot. And if your guess was a projection, Najee's not going to have as many yards because he's going to struggle. Jaylen Warren's going to have less yards because he's going to struggle. Okay. But I mean, there's no indication that the Pittsburgh Steelers are taking a step back and becoming a more passing offense when they were a passing offense last year and we're not good at it. And Najee's still at 1,000 yards. Jalen's still at 700 yards. I just don't, I don't see it coming. I don't see it coming. Let me ask you this before we move on. Najee, 1,000-yard runner this season. You still think that happens?
Yeah, I think it still happens, especially again, we take it with a grain of salt, but he's coming in with a newly formed skinny Najee phase. And I think that matched with the fact that he, one, has a good offensive coordinator that's going to be able to utilize the offense and the offensive line strength better. And two, the better offensive line in general. I think he's going to have another 1,000-yard season also because what you just mentioned, they're going to run the football more. And if they're going to do it more successfully, there's no reason that he's not going to run for 1,000 yards after he did it his first 3 seasons with Matt Canada, 2.5 of those 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. I don't think anybody remembers that Najee Harris ran for 1,000 yards with Trey Turner and Kendrick Green and Kevin Dotson and Dan Moore as his starting offensive line with Chukes Okorafor on the other side. I mean, it was tough times, my friends. It was tough times. 1,000-yard runner. I got a hard time believing that Isaac Seumalo, Zach Frazier, James Daniels, Troy Fautanu, and Broderick Jones are going to make things worse for this guy. I would guess 1,000 yards for Najee Harris. I think that's easy money. And I think Jaylen Warren is going to be a bigger bet. And I think that bet's worth it too, because I would say there's a good shot he hits 1,000 yards as well. All right, let's dive into some questions before we get out of here. Excuse me. Anybody who's got any more of them, toss them in the chat. We'll make sure to answer all of them before we head out.
Let's start with Sean LaRox. He says, if Arthur Smith's offense is that much better than what the Steelers have been dealing with the last 2 years, are we sure we want to be splitting the role of quarterback for another season?
I don't think it'll be split role. I think that they'll decide on a quarterback in training camp, which right now is Russell Wilson. They'll decide on a quarterback before week 1. That will be their quarterback. I think all the talk of, there'll be 2 quarterbacks. You're going to go into the season and Russ is going to get benched. I don't think any of that holds any ground. I think this is Russell Wilson's job right now. I think Justin Fields does have a shot at a competition and to earn his way into the starting role. But I don't think the Steelers are going to utilize both of them. I think the starting quarterback is the starting quarterback. The number 2 is the number 2. They will not change things unless they desperately need to. And I have a hard time believing that a running offense with, if it's Russ, I could see him getting benched for Justin Fields. I just don't see it the other way around. If Justin gets the job, I see him being the guy because they're going to want to work through any pains that they have with them just to see what they've got. But this will be a 1 quarterback system. It will be, you will have your guy. That's it. Besides that, that's all. It's all just headlines when it comes to they'll have special packages, so on and so forth.
Adam Carson wants to know, when talking about the cornerback room, do you see a world in which Darius Rush is the cornerback 2 and Dante Jackson moves inside to play the slot?
No, I don't. For one, I don't think Darius Rush is good enough to be a starter right now, and I hope he develops into that, but I just don't see, that's a pretty giant leap to go from undrafted guy who's already been on 3 teams, or not an undrafted guy, a guy who's already been on 3 teams who really didn't play a ton last season to a starter while Dante Jackson moves inside. Dante Jackson's also not a slot guy. Like I could see him moving inside to the slot if they definitely need him to, but that's not their ideal situation. I could see them adding a Patrick Peterson. I could see them adding a Cam Sutton before they move Dante Jackson inside. It's really an Anthony Averett. Like, is Anthony Averett good enough to start? If he is, they're fine. If they're not, I could see them making a move to go get somebody else.
Eric wants to know, do you see any moves being made on or after 6-1?
I think it changes some things, but like the amount of, it's like, I think everybody kind of ran with the DK Metcalf thing. It's after 6-1, his cap hit goes down, and that's what you're looking for if you're the Pittsburgh. I don't know. I don't think it holds any weight. Like, I think that the Steelers are past the major wide receiver trade. I don't think that they're looking for it. I think that they wanted one. They definitely wanted one. It didn't work out. They're not just going to continue to stare it down and say we're going to get one no matter what. I don't think so. I mean, that being said, do I see any moves being made on or after 6-1? Yes, but I don't think it's because of the 6-1 deadline where cap hits change and so on and so forth. I just think that they will make moves. Like, I expect them to most likely add a corner. I expect them to most likely add a wide receiver, but I don't think any of it is going to be the major splash that a lot of people think it's going to be.
Broderick Wallace goes back over to the offensive side and says it's early, but who is the tight end number 2 when the season starts?
I think it's Darnell Washington, but I also think that they're going to be utilized in different ways. Like, I think Connor Hayward's going to be more of a slot option. He's going to be outside a little bit more. They'll kind of utilize him as a fullback. He'll be a gadget guy. Darnell's, I think, going to be a little bit more involved in the receiving game, but not significantly more. I just think he's utilized better as a blocker and a big body in the red zone. I could see Darnell being he will be listed as the tight end 2. Connor will be the tight end 3. But they'll kind of split that role, I believe.
Robert wants to know, Fields is the future. Why would you let Russ start this season? He can be a great mentor, but Justin is 25 and beyond. 2025, excuse me, and beyond.
I agree. I think that Justin makes a lot more sense long term. The thing is that the Steelers are trying to win a Super Bowl. They could care less about next season. They could care less about 2 seasons from now. They understand that TJ Watt's getting up there in age, Minka Fitzpatrick's getting up there in age, Cam Hayward's getting up there in age. They're running out of time. Like, they need to go win a Super Bowl. They're only worried about winning a Super Bowl now. Russ might give them the best opportunity to win a Super Bowl, and they see that, and that's all they care about. Let's go win a Super Bowl this year. We'll figure out the rest next year. And I agree with that philosophy. Like, nobody cares. You go and win a Super Bowl. Next season doesn't matter because you just won a Super Bowl. If you go and win 2, awesome. But that's super rare to go win back-to-back Super Bowls. So you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now. I think Wilson, I don't know if he gives them the best opportunity, but I think in their head, they think right now he does.
Let's really put your Strackbine media knowledge to the test here. Between the Pens and the Steelers, who would you bet to make the second round of the playoffs next year?
Wow, that is tough, but I think there's an obvious answer here that it's the Steelers. I'm sorry, Pens fans, but it's it's a rough time right now in the Pittsburgh Penguins nation, in the Pittsburgh Penguins world. They got to get young, but they got to get better. And some of their guys that are kind of young aren't working out. Some of their guys that are kind of old aren't working out. It's a tough time for the Penguins. For the Steelers, I think it all comes down to who do you get? You got to look at it like Buffalo didn't look great, but they had a shot there at the end, and it was Mason Rudolph running the show. So it was a worse defense than they have right now. It was a worse offensive line. It was a much worse offensive coordinator. Like, I don't know. I think they got an opportunity. I would say my money's on the Steelers. Let's hope that this is the year that somebody breaks it, because I think the city of Pittsburgh, man, they really need it.
I don't think it's going to be the Pirates either. So I think all hope is on the Steelers at this point. I mean, you look at the Penguins, they're trying to get back to the playoffs. At least the Steelers, they're in a position where they have a talented defense. They have an offense that has potential, but let's see if all the pieces go together. For the Steelers, it comes down to, do they get better quarterback play? And the bar has been set very low for that in recent seasons.
Very low. And I'm going to toss out a sleeper there right now. Pitt basketball, man. You want to talk about a team getting in the second round? Pitt basketball. They make the tournament. I don't know. I'm a believer.
Eric does have a question here. He says, does Beanie Bishop get a spot over Rush or Trice at cornerback, or will he be more of a special teams guy next season?
I think it's still too early to tell. I don't think Trice isn't out there for team stuff. He hasn't been cleared for contact, so you got to see what he could bring. Rush has only had a good week, so you got to see him that continue. Beanie Bishop has kind of been under the radar, so he hasn't really done anything, so you got to see more of him. I could see them keeping Beanie Bishop. I have a hard time believing that they're going to cut him unless he really stinks, which he could. He's an undrafted guy. I think that, the name holds something. The draft spot holds a lot more. I could see him being a guy that if he does make the team, he's a special teams guy. I think Anthony Averett's the favorite to win that job right now. Rush and Trice, I think, are guys that they want to keep around. They want to develop. They see some upside, and they fit that avatar corner, massive human being body type that Joey Porter Jr. brings, and they got upside for the future. So I would say, if I had to guess right now, Beanie's a special teams guy, but I think all 3 of them are special teams guys, and they just kind of hope somebody develops into like the backup outside corner, maybe the backup inside corner with Beanie.
And that's all we got for today's questions.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we're going to head out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as we've been saying, please go subscribe to our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk clips, for even more of the show. We will be back tomorrow. We're headed to the South Side now, so make sure to follow si.com/NFL/Steelers for all the updates throughout the day. With that said, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.